Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Voltron Legendary Defender episode reviews. So Season 4 is out today, and I'm going to be reviewing it in two parts. So this first part here is going to be me reviewing the first 3 episodes of this 6-episode season. The episodes are Code of Honor, Reunion, and Black Site, the first 3. I haven't watched the other 3 yet, so this is kind of my just initial reaction to the first 3 episodes, and then I'll basically, the second I finish editing and uploading this video, I'll watch the remaining 3 episodes, record a video, and put that one out. So that's how you'll get most of my coverage. And then on the weekend, we'll be doing a podcast review, myself and some of the other podcast co-hosts. Assuming we can organize that, will be done on Sunday, and I'll get that podcast out. I'll probably put it up on YouTube as well for a more in-depth review of the full season. But yeah, let's jump in, Season 4. Overall, I thought that this was a pretty good opening to the season. I think there's always going to be a weirdness around some of these shorter seasons now that seems to be the format. Just with regards to, like, really, what season are we actually in? Because they call them seasons, but it's more just like releases. That's kind of the way to look at the seasons. Like, Season 1, yes, was a season. Season 2... yes, was a season. Season 3 really was kind of more like, part of a season. And even looking back at Season 1 and 2, it's more like, yeah, that's Season 1 Part 1, and then Season 1 Part 2 for the first 2 seasons. And it's weird here in that it feels like either we're getting a half seasons of much shorter overall kind of groups of episodes, or we're getting like quarter seasons. So we're kind of open up with episodes that don't necessarily feel like season openers. But also don't feel like, oh, like this is just meant to be like the follow-up to the previous episode. The other thing is just that very much we are now into a position with the series where it kind of becomes kind of Star Wars Rebels-like in terms of a plot, where the overall plot is really like form a rebellion. Form a coalition, in this case, against the Galra Empire. And because of that, that means that the main plot, the core of the main plot is get new planets on our side. Make sure we have enough ships, make sure we have enough fighters, defend important bases, and it kind of just becomes these kind of scattered battles rather than a very direct story. And so it means that, like, when we have that basic plot and then we open up with a very, like, Keith-centric episode, then we get a very Pidge-centric episode, and then the third episode very much is kind of, I think, presenting more of the plot and getting into like, oh, this is actually where the season is going. That's the only, I suppose, fear going forward, is how they're going to manage like character focus, in that we only care about a very specific group of characters, but we're dealing with such a huge galactic spanning conflict. How do you kind of balance all of that? And with a show like this, where it has had problems with balancing some of this stuff before, in that Hunk, I think a lot of people are now of the opinion, like, where's Hunk going to get a plot from? When is he going to feel important? Lance, to some degree, feels like that as well. Like, they could do something, but when are they actually going to hit on that? Right now, those two characters feel like there's not much there for them, really. And then the other thing I think was just a kind of lingering thing throughout all of the episodes is just a sense of, at times this show feels like it's very open with its information. At times it feels like it holds back far, far too much. And I think with this season, obviously having not watched the final 3 episodes of the season, the thing that I hope they at some point reveal is, what is Lotor's kind of plan? What's his goal? And I think along with that, what sort of connection is he? Like, he's Zarkon's son, but because Zarkon is so old, like, is he actually like his biological son? And if so, who's his mother? Is it Hagar? I'm not really Onerva, or whatever you want to call her. Is it her? Because the reveal with her at the end of last season was that she got her memories back, her past back, so she knows who she is, and that was clear from like the first scene we saw with her this season. It's just, she never really seems to allude to Lotor in any sort of a way where it like feels like she's looking at her son. There's obviously that connection there, in that she now realizes kind of, I suppose, her connection to Zarkon. It's just, I'm kind of waiting for some sort of reveal to come out with Hagar, with Zarkon, with Lotor. The other thing I think is just like, okay, Zarkon's back. I hope they have something more interesting with him, because it's pretty fair to say that he was a fairly bland and boring villain in the first 2 seasons, like right up until his like defeat at the end of season 2. What made him so much more interesting was the flashback episode at the end of last season. And what they need to do now is really like address that. Address that fundamentally this is a guy who, you know, maybe had some of these kind of ideas of like focusing on power, but fundamentally it was the him focusing kind of to some degree on his wife, on Nerva's kind of goals that kind of led him down this path. Also, let's not forget about the whole idea of that the kind of darkness kind of type thing that infected the two of them, that was in the kind of alternate dimension on the planet Dibazol. Let's not forget that that is like ultimately this kind of overall evil to all of this, and that yes, Onerva and Zarkon were kind of sort of going down that path of being somewhat evil and being misguided, but that I think a lot of the fact that the reason they're so evil right now is because of that kind of darkness. So that still is the thing lingering on in the background about like they'll need to address what that is at some point, and if that still is having an effect on them up to now. And maybe that links into Lotor. Maybe he over time has realized that his parents are, you know, not really acting on their own will, and that fundamentally the Galra Empire is being run by, yes, Galrans, but Galrans who are like possessed by something and not in their right minds, and he feels that he can guide the Galra Empire to the place it needs to be, because I think that's ultimately where they are probably going, that Lotor feels that he is the one who is right to lead the Galra Empire going forward, in terms of a better direction, in that he is more peaceful, he is more open to dealing and not just kind of taking over the planets that are part of the Empire. So it's going to be this weird conflict of like, Voltron will still want to oppose him because he fundamentally still agrees with the idea of the Galra Empire. And maybe that's where, if there ever is some sort of a like alliance between Lotor and the Voltron Paladins against Zarkon, they could have some sort of agreement about like where things are going to go, about like, you know, we'll help you on condition that when you take control of the Galra Empire, you like really kind of lower the amount of territory that the Galra Empire encompasses, and you free a lot of planets, or something along those lines. That seems to be the direction they're going in. But again, because we don't know Lotor's plan right now, it's a little bit weird in terms of what's happening, in that like, okay, he's got the Trans-Reality Comet, and so far he's made 2 ships out of it, I think, and clearly he plans to make more, with I think the idea being that he might end up with, you know, either 4 or 5. It'll be some form of a combiner type thing, like a Voltron, or else it'll just be a fleet of ships that are as powerful as Voltron, and it will be this interesting, you know, dynamic to see how it actually plays out. But again, a lot of the reveals that need to happen are around Lotor's family lineage and his goals overall. The other thing would be Oxia, his main commander, the person who was in the Weblum, the connection with Keith. Whatever reveal happens there in terms of like how they came together, how his group formed, I think is an interesting backstory to tell. But that was mainly focused on the 3rd episode. So shifting things over to Keith a bit. I've said it since the first time we were introduced to the Blades of Marmora. I feel that they're in dire need of some, I think, proper development, in that they were introduced in season 2. I obviously wasn't a fan of the episode they were introduced in, because I felt it was too much teasing around an important thing for a character, and I thought the reason for why they didn't just go ahead and tell us Keith's backstory there was very weak. Then they were just involved in the fight at the end, and I think the overall problem with the Blades is that they constantly talk about how like they're this really old kind of rebel group against the Galra Empire. Because the Galra Empire has been around for so long, they are the main rebel group, and it just doesn't ever feel like this is a big group. They constantly talk about this network that they have, but we only ever know like Calivan, this new guy, Regris or whatever his name was, that gets killed in this season, and now Keith is a part of them. Antok obviously was killed at the end of season 2, and that's really about it. We know there are other members because of the Blades of Marmora episode, but they still feel like a fairly small group, and I think we fundamentally don't really know what it is that they really represent with regards to like, do they represent what the Galra culture was prior to the Galra Empire? Are they trying to keep that alive, or are they a group who represents something like different, this other kind of aspect of, you know, Galran society? That's what they kind of need to go into. What is the actual origin story of this group? And I think along with that, the decision that Keith makes in this episode to basically no longer be a paladin, at least for now, and just become an agent of the Blades of Marmora, is an interesting one, because I think ultimately it helps his character, and it helps where they need to go with him as a character, in that I think what's always lingering over him right now is that he sided with his family, you know, Team Voltron, and in doing so didn't learn the truth about his mother, his family, what actually happened. Now that he's removed himself from Team Voltron, it would make sense that now would be a time where he gets that reveal of what's up with his mother, what the connection is, why he's part Galra, and so on. That, I think, now gives him that opportunity to get that reveal. The other thing it obviously added was that Shiro's now back in place as the Black Paladin, and I think that immediately, just the fact that he connected with the Black Line again, really, you know, shot some holes in some of the kind of conspiracy theories we've been having about Shiro after the mysterious kind of reappearance of him last season. Because there's obviously been like the clone theory, the robot theory, he's brainwashed and he's a sleeper agent type stuff. And for the most part, the way they've presented him in these first 3 episodes has been very much like, no, it's just Shiro. He's maybe a little bit kind of harsher because he's in this more of a overall command system. But at the same time, I thought this season, especially once he became the Paladin again, he was much more understanding of things and back to kind of the way he was. So I think on the podcast for season 3, with regards to speculation about where this would go, my thoughts were that, like, okay, we know we're getting at least, you know, 7, 8 seasons or something like that. I can't remember. It's like confirmed for at least like 74 or 76 episodes. So we've got a good few more seasons to go. Imagine they just went like 3 or 4 seasons with just Shiro normal, no suspicions around him, and then all of a sudden, boom, they activate whatever it is they're doing with Shiro, that he is a clone, he is a robot, they have brainwashed him, and now they activate him to be on the Galra side of things. Imagine that just happened, and all of a sudden we're down to 4 paladins because Keith is away with the Blades of Marmora. That would be a really, really cool thing to do, to just set up this long kind of hidden plot, and the only thing that really brings you back to it is just the suspicion you initially had based around the episode, how he returned. But overall, you know, the Keith episode was, I think, interesting. You know, a little bit of a case of like he's always been one of the main characters, and because Hunk and Lance barely get anything, the fact that they devoted an episode completely to Keith, basically, and his arc, was a little bit, it felt a little like, okay, please just cover the important things with Keith. We get it, he's like one of the more important characters, but like, we've had a bit of enough of Keith. So I actually like that they've done something very different with him and just placing him away separate with the Blades on this important mission. I just hope what they do with him there is interesting enough. Shiro being back as the Paladin, I think, is interesting for sure, and that it was this big moment they were getting beaten down, then he arrives back in and is immediately that commanding figure again, and I thought it was very well done. You also had the background stuff of obviously them having to do the kind of presentation type stuff for the Voltron Coalition to bring everyone on board, and Keith kind of letting the team down. Perhaps could have used a little bit more of a kind of backstory about like why Keith wants to be an agent of the Blades of Marmora. And again, this is where they should have made the connection of like maybe what he wants to do, maybe get that, you know, vision of his mother or whatever happened back again. But yeah, that's that episode. And then the second episode was about Paige, a reunion, and it was she finally finds Matt, and again a kind of a solo episode for her for the most part. And you obviously get to see her doing investigation, doing science, but I think what was very impactful and powerful about this episode was that they used flashbacks very effectively. I think a lot of people are a big fan of like Paige's design, back from like before in the past. Just because I think there are some times with this show where you just kind of forget that she's a girl in a way. Because that reveal back in season 1 was just kind of like, okay, that there's a reason for why you needed to do that, but they almost didn't need to do it that way, and it always felt like it just doesn't kind of matter in a way, which is fine. But maybe there's a sense of like wishing after she had gone through that she had maybe like changed up her design a little bit to make it a bit clearer. But still, she was awesome in this episode with the fighting that she did, the investigation stuff, and then especially like when she gets to that kind of graveyard where all the freedom fighters kind of their kind of tracking number, their kind of data card thing is, and it really made it clear, just I suppose, the extent of this battle against the Galra Empire, just how many people have died in the process of this war, which is kind of something that's been forgotten over time, I think, a little bit, just because we're so focused on our main team where you can't kill off a character every episode, and it just makes it clear that people are dying all over the place and Voltron can't be everywhere. And in the time when Voltron wasn't around, we lost this crazy amount of people, and it was this incredible moment of just, you get there and it's clear that it's some sort of a monument, and she's walking into her graveyard and that's where the tracker is, and she gets to the place and there's one for Matt, and it's only the fact that they had previously revealed in the flashback the kind of the code that the Holt family used to kind of communicate with each other secretly, that on Matt's gravestone there was one of these codes which led her to where he actually was. I thought it was just a really good way of like, okay, we're going to introduce Matt as a character. Let's use flashback to show, what his relationship with Paige was like, and maybe contrast that or show that this is how it's going to be like going forward. That they had this really good relationship. He always gave her like support and confidence, and just kind of, in a way, she wanted to do what she wanted to do, become such an amazing scientist, so clever, join the Galaxy Garrison because of him, and he very much inspired her to get to that point. And just showing that they had a really, really good brother-sister relationship, and the second they're reunited, you see that it's immediately back. They're both extremely intelligent, they're both good fighters, maybe not the best fighters, but they're both solid, and together with kind of more intelligent plans they can obviously defeat characters if they need to. And just adding another kind of really kind of more sciencey character to the group I thought was interesting, in that you have like Hunk, Paige, and now Matt as like this kind of tech trio, and together they can do a lot of very interesting stuff. The reunion of him kind of coming back in episode 3 to the group was interesting, because obviously he doesn't know a lot of the characters. He knows Shiro, which was a nice moment where like he cuts through the crowd and he's like, "Sir," but Shiro just hugs him, getting that connection across, and immediately moving things on to like, we'll do everything we can to help you find your father. And how's that going to be? Because it's very much been like, Paige like, find my father and Matt, but ever since she got the hint about Matt, it's been all about him. Let's not forget about their father, Commander Holt. So that's an interesting one. Matt has a crush on Allura. I thought that was an interesting one, to just have him be this very kind of sciencey tech character, and then they almost go like Brock from Pokemon level of like, when he sees an attractive girl, he has that kind of reaction. I thought that was kind of a fun thing to add to his character and create a little dynamic between him and Lance about their kind of crush on Allura. Yeah, and then just him meeting the rest of the group was kind of nice. Keith obviously wasn't there, so he hasn't met Matt, so that'll be interesting if that ever happens in this season or going forward. But just really, really cool stuff to have another character on the team, and especially how they used him later on, that Paige all of a sudden can add this extra tech into her line because she can have Matt be like her co-pilot and like activate some of this stuff while she focuses on the flying. And I think just having that dynamic of like, she's always kind of felt like the youngest, she has been the youngest member of the family. She's kind of been behind, like they've gone on these missions. She sees her brother Matt go off on the Kerberos mission. She's left behind. And then when she finds Matt again, suddenly she's in this like incredible position of like being a paladin of Voltron, and just to see how like happy and ecstatic and impressed Matt is with her about like she in a way has become like the best of them all in a way of the family getting this amazing position on the team, and seeing how like happy and proud she was to show him around the castle, and you know just have that nice bonding moment together was, I think, really really well done. As they basically get a full like tracker view of the Gaur Empire is the main thing they discover. And yeah, we just end with this idea of like the Team Voltron know that the Gaur Empire is against Lotor, and everyone hears the message from Zarkon that Lotor is going to be treated as basically an enemy of the Empire, and anyone who encounters his group, anyone in the entire Galran Empire, is free to, without prejudice, you know, with prejudice, whatever, kill Lotor at will. So he's just out on his own now completely, and whatever he does next I think is going to be very interesting, and then whatever decision Team Voltron make with regards to Lotor, also equally interesting. But overall, as I said, I was pretty pleased with the first 3 episodes. Only some slight worries about, you know, the structure, the balance of all the characters and stuff like that, and just an overall, I suppose, hope that they commit and give some of the key information that we want and need, and that it kind of, you know, overall like builds to something kind of greater going forward, because there is a slight danger, I think, with them getting a little bit too Star Wars Rebels-y with the kind of plot that they have going on here. If it's too much some of this kind of more political stuff of like uniting rebel groups with no real effort, like, oh, we'll get this fuel from here, this spaceship from over here, that could be a little dull when the focus and the strength of the show is its characters and so on. So I just hope they don't get lost too much in some of that Voltron Coalition stuff. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Voltron Season 4. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on these 3 episodes. But yeah, that's been the first video, and yeah, I'm pretty much going to go now and watch the other 3 episodes, and I'll get that video up then. But yeah, it's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.